I would like to call us back to order. If you'd find your seats, please. Welcome back from lunch, everyone. Welcome back to the Assembly Festival Session 1. At this time, I'd like to invite Pastor Mark Grorud of Emmanuel Vision Foundation Executive Director, who will make an announcement.
My name is Mark Grorud, and I am the Executive Director of the Emmanuel Vision Foundation. And we have a lot to celebrate. Do you know the word celebrate occurs 94 times in the Bible? Do you know how many times the word boring occurs? Or what about blah or eh? Not once. God calls us to celebrate, and we have so much to celebrate. We should be filled with joy. We are the people of God, loved by God, graced by God in the waters of baptism, challenged by God to be people of joy. So let's celebrate. The Emmanuel Vision Foundation wants to share some of that celebration with you by encouraging each congregation and Synod-authorized worshiping community in the Synod to find something to celebrate. This summer, the Emmanuel Vision Foundation is offering a grant of $1,000 to each and every congregation and Synod-authorized worshiping community in the Nebraska Synod, and we want to encourage you to use these funds in some way that makes you happy, that brings you joy, that causes you to celebrate. The tellers are handing out information on these grants right now. You will see a list of things you might want to consider: supporting disaster relief in Nebraska, helping a young pastor with seminary debt, having a barbecue and inviting the whole neighborhood, sending kids to camp, and more. But you don't have to stick to that list. You decide. What is it that would bring a smile to your congregation? That's what you should do. Now, there are 3 important things you have to do in order to receive this grant. These things make my friends at the IRS very happy. Number 1, you need to send the Emmanuel Vision Foundation 2 or 3 paragraphs telling us how you are going to celebrate with these funds. Number 2, you need to provide the names of at least 3 people who were part of the decision on spending these funds. That's so that the choir director, on her or his own, doesn't decide that everyone in the congregation needs a noisemaker to accompany the hymns. And number 3, you must return this to the Emmanuel Vision Foundation office by July 31st. I'm sorry, but there are no exceptions. July 31st is an absolute deadline. Be on time. So have some fun. Talk with your congregation, with your council, with your youth group. Decide what you want to do. Then write it down and send it in. By the way, a copy of the same information you are receiving is currently in the mail to your pastor and your council president. Our second reason to celebrate is just a reminder that the Emmanuel Vision Foundation has grants available this fall in the amount up to $10,000 for congregations. This will take a little more work on your part, but it's not impossible. We have supported grants in approximately 40 congregations since we began in 2015. There's information on this grant process on the second sheet you just received. The biggest thing that the Emmanuel Vision Foundation is looking for in Congregational Synod Mission Fund grants is a project or a program that does something outside of yourself. Is there something that you can do for the community, some ministry you want to start in the community, or something you're already doing? Is there something that will serve others rather than serve yourself? We want to help you be church for the sake of the world. In other words, we don't want to support building projects or new music for the bell choir or repair a stained glass window that accidentally got broken during the last youth event, or supply donuts and coffee for a year of Sundays. We want to help you reach out to others. Approximately 70% of the congregational grants we have offered are for projects that a congregation is already doing in service to others. The other 30% are new projects that a congregation has developed with the help of Emmanuel Vision Foundation funding. Now, I invite you to see what's happening out there for others.
Arm in the Nebraska Synod ELCA, every action in Emmanuel's 131-year history is guided through the lens of a mission. Christ-centered service to seniors, each other, and the community. This mission has led us to serve over 2,000 seniors each year through compassionate retirement communities and PACE centers. We are so very honored to be part of the Nebraska Synod ELCA and the member congregations who are also engaged catalysts for mission in their communities. It is our collective work to support our missions that call us all to work together to share Christ's love. The strength we have together builds compassion, generosity, and stewardship. The Emmanuel Vision Foundation supports this strength by providing grants for ELCA congregations throughout the state. By working together, we build a culture of grace, love, and mercy. Like many congregations, American Lutheran Church in Philly, Nebraska has struggled with declining Sunday school attendance for several years. Located in a small rural community serving 4 different school districts, the church leadership was in regular conversation, asking how to reestablish a vibrant faith formation program for the congregation, as well as non-members from the community. Parents with good intentions remarked on the quandary they faced to balance the social pressures of work, school, organized sports, and honoring the vows they made at their child's baptism. Rather than shaming these families, they chose to model grace, pairing a nutritious meal with Christian education and fellowship. It's called the Beloved Program. Excited students from throughout the community are greeted by caring adults who prepare a tasty and nutritious meal, then share Bible stories, music, and a variety of Christian activities. The grant from Emmanuel Vision Foundation has been used to help purchase nutritious food and T-shirts for students and staff promoting Beloved. The Beloved program has demonstrated how combining grace with service to others can bring positive change to a world challenged by daunting social pressures. Trinity Reads is a unique and supplemental reading program provided by Trinity Lutheran Church in Omaha, Nebraska. This program is active in 6 elementary schools, 32 classrooms, touching nearly 750 students in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grades. Trinity Reads supplies the books and a volunteer to each classroom each month and reads the book with the students. By the time students complete the 3rd grade within this program, they have close to 20 books and have created or added to their own home library. Their motto at Trinity Reads is, "A child who loves to read is a child who will succeed." Being awarded a grant from the Emmanuel Vision Foundation was huge for Trinity Reads. With generous help from foundations such as Emmanuel Vision Foundation, they have been able to keep fostering a love for reading in children for the last 9 years. What started in 1972 with a request by mothers of intellectually and developmentally challenged children looking for Sunday school has become a special program at St. Timothy Lutheran Church in Fremont, Nebraska, the FACE program. FACE stands for Faith, Action, Caring, Extraordinaire. The grant from Emmanuel Vision Foundation gave this special program a boost, and several activities have been added. Such activities including Servant Saturday, card making, and the ever-popular summer food tote packing, most recently packing 600 food totes in 1.5 hours, enough to provide weekly totes to 75 students for this summer. Having these extra activities is very beneficial for FACE program members. It gives them the opportunity to do things like everyone else does, socializing, working on an activity, and purposeful service. We are part of a calling to share Christ's promises of grace, love, and mercy. We know we are not called to do this ministry alone. It's as we work together that we can best share God's message and become stewards of purpose for those who need us most. Thank you, the congregations of the Nebraska Synod, for allowing us to join in this mission of celebration and promise to which Christ calls us.
We have many reasons to celebrate. If you have any questions, please give me a call. It's all about celebration. God is so good. As a congregation, find something that brings a smile to your face, that makes everyone feel good about being the people of God. Find something to celebrate. We are the church, the people of God. We need to celebrate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Emmanuel Vision Foundation, for your generosity through the last 5 years of grant cycles, but especially with this celebration grant. Please take those sheets of paper home and follow up on them. When was the last time you came back from a lunch and someone said, "Here's $1,000"? And if it was recently, raise your hand because I want to go have lunch with you. This is a gift the Vision Foundation intends literally for you to celebrate. All of Nebraska's serving armed partner ministries consider themselves church. They are church. They are outstanding partners. They recognize their heritage in the church. And when they are blessed, they share. Emmanuel has been blessed. The Emmanuel Vision Foundation has been blessed. And this celebration is their way of saying thanks. They recognize God's hand in what has made that foundation possible. So in that same spirit, please, in gratitude and celebration, go home and dream and have a good time and make a difference in people's lives. Well, it's that time when we do the bishop's report that 7 years in, I'm still trying to figure out why we do this and what exactly it is. I think I'm supposed to update you on what's going on. Nobody told me otherwise. Every year I get frustrated that it seems like I talk forever, and I know it's a problem. But it frustrates me trying to make it shorter, and then I finally realize, you know what, there's just so darn much happening in the Nebraska Synod, it's really hard to get it all in, and none of it should be excluded. Because who you are and what you do is nothing short of incredible in Nebraska, but around the world. So, quickly to a few things. First, you know that our theme this year is Disciples for All the World. That's chosen because we're at a significant pivot point between our themes. You know that 4 years of our strategic vision have been laid out. Every year we've had a theme across the Synod. They've been Bishop Eaton's 4 marks of the church. The first 2, if you know what they are, just feel free to chime in. We are church. We are Lutheran. Good. And we're just wrapping up the 3rd year, which is we are church together. And now, beginning with this assembly, we move into we are church for the sake of the world. Right, so at this point between we are church together and church for the sake of the world, the planning team wanted to lift up a theme that suggested together we serve the world, hence disciples for all the world. It was chosen because we take our marching orders from Jesus, who told us that repentance and forgiveness of sins is to be proclaimed in Jesus' name to all nations, to those people. Jesus said, "You are witnesses," talking to us as well as the disciples. "You are to be witnesses to the ends of the earth." Because that's so, we are disciples for all the world. We go as disciples to the world, those who are sent, bearing the good news. We also make disciples of all the world, inviting others into the community of Christ and his fellowship. And we are growing disciples for all the world. My English teacher said, always pay attention to your prepositions. We do all three of those. We go to all the world, making disciples of all the world, for all the world. Hence our theme. I'm hoping you might have noticed that we adopted a new logo this year and a long-distance clicker. Okay, there we go. You may or may not have been struck when you first saw this. It looks like it says 1. Others just see NE, Nebraska. They're both there. That's intentional because we are united in Christ in a world that's rapidly being torn apart. We wanted to emphasize our unity, our oneness, but clearly say we are Nebraska Synod of the ELCA. So our ELCA globe is there to say we're solidly a part of that. We rejoice in being part of a much larger church. Our tagline, if you will, not quite a mission statement, is growing disciples, walking together, serving God's world. That parallels what I was talking about with being sent as disciples. I'm hoping you might recognize that skip the slide. That's okay, we'll keep going. We talk about growing disciples because that's who we are. So it's a descriptive term. We are growing disciples. However, it's also what we do. And sometimes we make the clicker work. I mean, we grow a lot of things in Nebraska. We understand it. But we understand two things. As disciples, we're called never to stop growing ourselves, even as we help others be invited into the faith and grow them as disciples. We not only grow disciples, we walk together. Walking together is how we operate. Even in our disagreement, we strive to be together, to question, push, challenge, invite one another to walk together into whatever future God has before us. Together in a world of apartness. It makes a difference. And then serving God's world is just where we witness all over the world. Not just Nebraska, not just our backyards, but everywhere in the world. Now, excuse me. It's that time again. This is number 7, so the answers should be obvious. It may get boring to you, but until I get all the right answers, I'm going to keep asking the quiz. Most of you are Lutheran confirmation survivors, so that's fine, and you can name the little book that we learned from. It's called the Small Catechism. It was written by Martin Luther, and the most frequent sentence in the Small Catechism is, "Ha! I can retire." First time I didn't get more of "this is most certainly true" than I got of "what does this mean?" Absolutely. Questions. Our catechism, our faith, our formation teaches us to ask questions, not to be answer providers. That slams doors, and there are way too many people who know all the answers. We are those who ask questions. Questions always open doors. They invite people into conversation, into relationship, into exploration, into discovery, into inspiration. We are those who ask questions as we encounter the world. It's our creative and inspired way to be. So, our questions, the question is not only, what does this mean? I think there's another significant one we need to be asking ourselves always when we look at our own congregations and ministries. That question is, are lives being transformed? That's how we know whether or not our mission is being effective at all. It's really not about the numbers of dollars or members or attendance. All important things, being good stewards of what we have is important. Counting it is important. Ask Dan, he'll tell you. But the question is, are lives being transformed? If your attendance doubles in the course of a year and nobody's life changes, you've wasted your time and the people who are there. So are we transforming lives? I will contend to you that we are. I suspect you and your congregations can say yes as well, but I would like you to be asking that question so you can talk about it amongst yourselves at home. Now, in looking at the Nebraska Synod, when I think about the question, are lives being transformed, I think of a quote from Joseph Jaworski, who said, We don't describe the world we see the world we describe. And if you pay attention at all to media, and who can't, the world that's being described is a scary place, a broken place, a violent place, a threatening place, a place that's just not too pleasant. That's not the world I see. That's not the world described in the Bible. That's not the world we are called to witness to by describing. So let me describe for you what I see when I look at the Nebraska Synod. I do see challenge. I'm not a Pollyanna. I'm not even a Winnie the Pooh. I'm an Eeyore straight across. Let's just get that out. I would never deny that there are challenges. More challenges now than at any time in generations for the church in North America. Yes, there's challenge. And as I wrote in my report, and as there are challenges, there is hope. There is both. And instead of fighting the tension and trying to go one way or another, let's embrace both and say, yeah, you know what, there are challenges, but there's a lot of hope too. There's a lot of hope because of who we are and whose we are, because Jesus Christ's Spirit is alive and loose in the world. I'll be honest with you up front about the numbers, about the trends. When we talk about growing disciples, that's not a particular Nebraska Synod graph, but it could as well be, or an ELCA graph, or a Church in North America graph. Virtually all the things we count, we measure, we number, are in a downward trend. There's no point lying about that or deceiving ourselves. That's what is. And one of the ways we hope to address the reality of what's causing some of those declines is to be very clear about who we are and how we talk about ourselves. On the one hand, we have this wonderful gift of the image of the church as the body of Christ. And St. Paul especially writes about it a number of times, and one of the better ones, for just as the body is one and has many members, and all the members of the body, though many, are one, so it is with Christ. Now, Paul's point is that it's one body. We too often tend to think about the members, the individual members. Paul is talking always about the body of Christ, and no member of the body can hurt without another part aching. No part can succeed without all of it feeling good. That's what we talk about with members of the body in the church. The trouble is, in English, we're stuck with that language, with that word, which has another meaning. We tend to think about being members of a club, members of Costco, members of a group, members only. What do I get out of being a member? What does a member give me access to that it doesn't give non-members access to? And when that consumer mentality comes in, and that's how we think of ourselves as members of congregations and of the Church of Christ, then we act like members of a club or a Costco or some other organization. I want to get what I pay for. I determine the value of this organization by what I get out of it. And if I don't like it, I either insist on change or I take my toys and leave. That is not what it means to be members of the body of Christ. But the word is the same, member, member, member. So, you may notice that in Nebraska Synod literature and promotions, we talk a lot less about members and much more about disciples. Jesus didn't call any members. There were no members in the disciple. They were all disciples. It just wouldn't have computed. Disciples, people who grow in discipline, people who change, people who are transformed. This is who we are. So you'll hear me use disciple language throughout this presentation, throughout this weekend, and in all the literature we use as Nebraska Synod. I would encourage you to do the same in your congregations. Use member language less and less and less, and disciple language more and more and more. Be intentional and think about it when you do it. Pray into that practice. Now, Of all the things that are resulting in decline, of all the things that membership language is making us do as people leave and withhold their money and so on and so forth, the biggest problem currently facing us as we strive to become, again, disciples, is a big shortage, a graph. You've seen this 2 or 3 years in a row. I apologize, but it hasn't changed. This is the number of full-time calls without pastors, let alone deacons, in the ELCA. This year, that number is 1,020. 1,020 short. Now, you can look at that as a shortage of pastors and a decline, or you can say, look, there's a growing opportunity for new pastors. What a great possibility. What a great time to think about being a pastor. What a great time to consider a call. So, we in the Nebraska Synod are working hard at that leadership issue. Some of you have seen a number of people wearing buttons around. Mine came off somewhere. It's called Sow the Seeds. Sow the Seeds is an initiative that looks at congregations from whom a number of rostered ministers, deacons, and pastors have come, asked about their practices, how they get that to happen. And it helps all of us learn inviting behaviors and things we can do to encourage other people to enter the ministry as deacons, as pastors, as PMAs, to put their toes in the water, to test leadership in the church, even to become stronger lay leaders in the church. There are brochures around. There's a wonderful postcard around that says, I see God's blank in you. You can fill it in. I see God's gentleness, grace, compassion. You write it in. You sign it and give it to somebody at your own church. And it doesn't matter if they're 6 or 96. They have potential to be disciples and grow in service and leadership in the church. Most of us who responded to the call to ministry as deacons or pastors first were invited, first got the call when we were in grade school or middle school. It's not too early to encourage people then. And it's not too late. So many of our good, solid pastors have been second career folks, team folks, people who finally heard others urge them to go into ministry. That's our job together. That we have enough pastors and deacons, they're just not formed yet. We need to invite them, and it can be done. We've just sort of lost that skill over the years. We're also announcing this summer the initial class offered by the Emmaus Lutheran Leadership Academy. Nebraska Synod is blessed in so many ways. It's so rich in so many things. We have a veritable seminary faculty serving in the pulpits of this synod. People with PhDs in a variety of seminary-related topics who said, we're short pastors and we got PhDs and terminal degrees because we love to teach, but we're serving in congregations because we love to serve congregations. Could we do something to teach while we serve congregations? And so, with the benefit of an Emmanuel Vision Foundation grant, we have set up Emmaus Lutheran Leadership Academy, where laity who are interested, people who are interested in the PMA program, even people who want to become team candidates for ordained ministry, can take classes here on the territory of the Nebraska Synod. Intensive courses, you don't have to go out of state, you don't have to take them online. In person, excellent courses. They begin, the first round is the end of July. We'll say a little bit more about that later this afternoon, and tomorrow we'll hear a sample lesson of what's available at Emmaus, so that you might consider taking courses. Our target audience is lay people who might be interested in learning more about their faith, as well as people wanting to become PMAs, people interested in becoming deacons or pastors, and those already who are deacons, pastors, or PMAs who want to deepen their understanding by doing continuing education. It's a remarkable gift. Nebraska is blessed to have those resources around, and I look forward to celebrating it and sharing more of that information with you. But know that for those people you know who can't think of leaving the state to move to a seminary campus, people who don't feel they learn well on computer and distance learning, there is another option right here in Nebraska. It's called Emmaus, modeled after that notion that Jesus walks with us and calls us into ministry, as he did that Easter day. We're also getting ready to form the second cohort of a leadership opportunity for rostered ministers. It's called How Then Will I Lead? We had just under 24 participants in the first cohort that's wrapping up at the end of this next month. It's been an outstanding experience for all involved, an experience of self-learning, self-awareness, overcoming blind spots, creating accountability, and growing personally and in leadership skills, for people who are already good pastors who are in the process of becoming great pastors. Again, because we have the resources to offer that, and because we have a grant from Emmanuel, and because we have people around the leadership table encouraging it, we can offer that, and our leadership cadre will grow. Think about encouraging your pastor or deacon to take part. But it's not just about rostered ministers or PMAs. We also work with our youth to raise up leaders for the church, leaders within congregations, leaders leading congregations. The Nebraska Synod Journey, it happens every summer. There's not a national youth gathering, where young people and their sponsors go to learn as well as to serve in other parts of the country. The Lutheran Youth of Nebraska Assembly that happens every year, the middle school gathering that happens every year, all ways to identify young people who become leaders. This was accepted into candidacy this spring, someone who's been part of the middle school and senior high events for several years now, and who in that process recognized the call of God on her life and is off to college in anticipation of seminary. That's what you do. I mean, you make this possible through your gifts, your support, and your presence as volunteers. We also have the gift in the ELCA of the Word and Service roster that we now combined and call deacons. Now, there's a lot going on with deacons at the church-wide assembly this summer, constitutional changes, entrance rights, and so forth. I'd be glad to answer questions about that, but I don't want to get into the weeds during this presentation. I do want you to hear clearly, however, that I am convinced that deacons are a gift to the church that's wholly unrealized and unrecognized. These are professional leaders in the church with specialized education and preparation who can preach, teach, lead, but who have special preparation to assist in the operation of congregation or a parish. And as we look at more and more congregations cooperating, just under 50% of our congregations are now in or entering into shared ministries. 50%. As we look at the ways in which their footprints get larger as they combine, adding more pastors isn't typically the best way to staff. Deacons are a great gift, and their flexibility makes them valuable. Find a deacon and ask them what they do. Talk to them. We also were able to certify 4 new parish ministry associates this morning. That's exciting to me because, while we have 36 currently serving, now 40, actively serving PMAs, who do remarkable things from covering interim ministries and congregations to assisting congregational staff, simply to being active lay members of congregations. The number was shrinking, and we did a surge a couple of years ago, thanks to you and your support. We now have 27 people in the preparation process to become PMAs. From 36, no, really. If everyone completes, that means we'll have gone from 36 to 63 in a matter of less than 4 years. If we could do that with the 340 rostered ministers, pastors and deacons, we'd have to export some. What a problem to have. But it can happen. We did it with the surge with PMAs. It can happen with the surge for rostered ministers as well. Thanks to all those who are doing that hard work of lifting up and recruiting for the PMA program and those who serve in it. Seeking the Spirit Within. You heard me say this is the 10th year. We're celebrating it. Its impact across the church is nothing less than yeast in a loaf of bread. Individual lives are changed. Congregations are changed. We've even seen, though we haven't run hard data on it, but anecdotally it looks to us like it's pretty clear, those congregations that have active participation with spiritual direction, either spiritual directors are members of the congregation, or they have a lot of participants in drinking from the well, or they host events for spiritual direction, are stronger, healthier congregations, and they support us more with mission share offerings than congregations that don't. Because that spiritual growth, that discipleship makes a difference. Now, it's not about the dollars. It's just remarkable to me that it's that strong a connection. And when I say they share mission share with us, I don't mean me or the Synod staff. I mean us. We do more ministry together. If you don't have someone involved in spiritual direction in your congregation or you're curious about it, pick up the literature. Email Connie Stover. Consider participating in some way. Have a visit to the congregation, but learn about seeking the Spirit within. Because states, synods across the country, synods from other states are asking us how they can do it. They recognize the value of spiritual direction, spiritual formation, and want to know how they can do what Nebraska Synod's been doing. Good on you for supporting that program. And I think it's important when we look at decline and we worry about numbers, tomorrow we get to celebrate the reception of Spirit of Grace Lutheran Church in Holdridge, Nebraska. Spirit of Grace is a matter of growing disciples, because they do grow disciples there. It'll be the newest congregation welcomed into the Nebraska Synod. It'll be, at least till tomorrow afternoon, the newest congregation of the ELCA. It'll be the first congregation we received, new congregation we've received in 7 years. Now we need to pick up that pace, plant more congregations and help them grow. But I'm so excited that we get to celebrate this. Not that many synods get to. Spirit of Grace is a remarkable worshiping community. I got to be there on their charter signing Sunday, first Sunday this month. And you'll hear them in worship tomorrow as Pastor Ted Carnahan brings the message and members bring music, readings, and other participations. But it's an exciting time. So many people go to Synod assemblies so many times and never get to celebrate the reception of a new congregation. It's exciting, and I'm grateful for all the work that's gone into it and for your support of that effort. That's just a quick glimpse of what it means to be growing disciples, we who grow and we who help grow others. I want to look at walking together and what it means that our behaviors are walking together behaviors. It's important because, as I've mentioned to you, this is a time in our culture when together is like the least common thing you hear on the media. It's all about apart, separation, division. We're big on together. Now, the realities of the decline I talked about a little earlier is that it causes things like high anxiety. People get nervous. As congregations get smaller, then the power that's held by each individual who says, well, if I don't get my way, I'm leaving, their power increases because they seem to be a larger portion of the congregation than they used to be. And so we see more bullying behavior. And sometimes it's not intentional. It's the result of anxiety. People are worried. People are scared. Anxiety leads to, well, to dumb things, but it also leads to turning inward. We turn in on ourselves when we're anxious. Whole communities turn in on themselves when they're anxious. Congregations turn in on themselves when they're anxious. They get more and more concerned about how are we going to pay the bills? How are we going to keep the building open? How are we going to keep going? How are we not going to lose members? And they forget the mission to which Christ calls them, the opportunity to which Christ calls all of us to be outside ourselves. You might remember that Luther defined sin as incurvatus in se in Latin, being turned in on oneself. That's the very definition of sin, is to be concerned only with ourselves. Again, that's the beauty of the motivation of the grants available to you. They're for things outside, that draw us all outside ourselves, so we can open ourselves up again and experience some vitality and practice mission. People who turn inward and are anxious also experience an awful lot of conflict. I haven't seen an annual meeting like that yet, but it's been close. Our office has received more requests, complaints, notices, needs for congregational consultations. That is, visiting congregations to do intentional listenings to help manage and overcome conflict. We have done more of those in the last 15 months than we did in the previous 5 years combined. I'm convinced it's because we're at a stage in our culture where that's just going to happen more and more. It's not that people are getting worse or that it's just people's anxiety is rising. Everybody experiences things getting a little more scarce every year. And after a point, the lid blows off of what's been kept under the covers for so long, and conflict erupts. So often it has to do with things as simple as not talking to each other, not being open in communication, about listening to the grapevine, about using phrases like, well, people are saying, well, you know, some people are upset. Well, I know a bunch of people who, folks, an unattributed quote, an anonymous quote, has exactly the same cash value as an unsigned check. It's worthless. When we do these consultations, we are very clear. We listen to people in person. We'll take written questionnaires. We'll receive them that way. There are a number of ways to communicate with us what your concerns with the congregation are. But if it's not your direct experience, or you're not willing to name who you saw or heard or whatever the issue is, it doesn't count. It goes straight in the wastebasket. It's not nice to say what people are saying. I don't want to say who they are. It's not nice. It's certainly not kind. It's dishonest. It is dishonest. We owe each other the willingness to say, I disagree. I am concerned about. I hope this changes. And I know it's hard. I'm a Nebraskan. I like being nice. I like being liked. But I also like being part of the body of Christ that hangs together even when parts are sometimes working against each other. It's who we are. It's what we owe each other. And if you have any concerns about conflict developing in your congregation, then talk with your leaders about the need to communicate clearly, to name the issues, and to be honest and open with and to each other. And if that's challenging or you don't go anywhere, then contact us on your Synod staff. That's what we're here for. Walking together is how we make disciples of all nations, including those people. We have had our share of conflict over the last several years, particularly since 2009, when we opened ourselves up to a much broader inclusive welcome of people regardless of sexual orientation, identity. But we've had conflict over other matters too. And we have become known as the church of the big tent, of the open doors, of inclusivity and of welcome. That's made some of us uncomfortable because those people show up. But for those people who've been turned away from so many other places, so many times, in so many ways, it is a beacon of gospel hope that there is a group of people willing to say and to mean it, that they are welcome, God loves them, and they have a place. Don't ever underestimate the value of that, no matter how hard it gets to practice it. It's who we are. Let's embrace it. Let's be those people who welcome those people. Remember, it ain't grace till it ticks you off. Right? So practice that grace. And those people aren't just people far away. They're people who disagree with us. I mean, sometimes it's the one sitting next to us in the pew that makes it most difficult for us to be in church. Am I right? Sometimes they drove there with us. But anyway. Because you pick people up on the way. I mean, Sometimes those people are ones who don't look like us. Let's be honest about that. We're a pretty homogenous state. We're a very homogenous church. We are the whitest church in the country. We are the whitest church in the country. Now, let's be honest about something else. Among mainline Protestants, the difference between Lutherans and Presbyterians and some of the others is marginal at best. But we have the distinction of being in last place. And there are things we can do about that, because as a state, we're now a quarter of our population is non-white. Latino, African American, Asian, you name it. People are out there and they're waiting to be invited in, because for the most part they aren't. Making disciples of those who aren't from here, people who are different from us. I was appreciating Linda Timmons speaking last night. Even people with disabilities so often have not been welcome in so many places. Our churches are striving to become welcoming places for them. I mean, thank God that Carson can come to the podium with Dara. It says such a wonderful thing to me that someone who needs a service dog is having one prepared, and we're great with it. That's how we ought to be in all things. Because we're called to be part of the kingdom of God. I mean, that's what Jesus preached about all the time, right? Become the kingdom of God. And the beauty, one of the great images of the kingdom of God is in Isaiah 25, God will swallow up death forever, wipe away the tear from every eye. There will be a feast of fat foods, of well-aged wine strained clear. Now, I don't know about you, but fat foods I get excited about. And I'm convinced that it can't be a banquet unless there's ice cream. Good ice cream. Fat ice cream. And I mean, I love vanilla, but I get tired of it. So if it's going to be a feast, there's got to be bourbon macaroon, there's got to be sherbet, there's got to be, I mean, have you ever had Ben & Jerry's everything but the kitchen sink? That is a highway, friends. It is so mixed up and so wonderful because there's so much in it. And that kind of feast is what the church is called to be. And so we strive to reach out and draw others in. Apparently, all we're doing is looking at ice cream. There we go. I talked last year about the Racism Awareness, Reconciliation and Engagement team, RARE team. They're doing workshops today and tomorrow. They've been doing outstanding work preparing resources for us, no matter where our congregations are, in that often uncomfortable tension about talking about reality of race. It's just real. It's okay. Right? It's an uncomfortable topic. But they have resources that can help you start a simple conversation with a small group on a Sunday morning, to a whole congregation event, to inviting other peoples in to have conversations and studies and so forth, just to get the tension out of the room, to get it on the table. I mean, you don't know how often I have to say, look, I'm sure I'm goofing this up. I want to be really sensitive and really open and inclusive, but I'm a product of my era and a product of my place, and I don't know everything. So tell me about it. Just ask those questions. RARE has great resources for you, and it's time for us to grow and broaden our welcome of all people. Also want to make sure you hear me say clearly that in spite of the shortage we have among rostered ministers, especially pastors, there is a cadre of people who are well-prepared, excellent candidates who are sitting not only without call, but often without interview. Some of them, it's because they are minority candidates, especially minority women candidates. Most of them, it's because they identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. Now, I know that that can make people uncomfortable to talk about it. But my experience is most people, especially on call committees and church councils, who are willing to interview, to talk to candidates who self-identify LGBTQ, have no problem. They can identify the person, the individual, the gifts, the opportunities, the calling, but they won't carry it further because they worry about what those people at home will think. Not those people outside, but those people I live with at home who might be upset, and I don't want to upset anybody. And I'm asking you the same way my predecessors had to ask 2 generations ago for people to interview women, to be open to and consider and interview these excellent candidates who are dying to serve. I talked to one last week. Happened to be a Latino gay man from an urban area. He said, I know what it is to be on the outside. I know what it is to live in poverty. I know what it is to be alone. And it looks to me like that's happening a lot in rural Nebraska. I would love to serve a rural community. We owe him an interview. He won't graduate for a couple of years, but he's an outstanding pastor who's going to go to another synod, and that just irritates me. We need 40 pastors today in Nebraska. Please, as your congregation goes through those transitions, as you raise up candidates from among your own congregations, be open, and recognize the Spirit moving. And yes, sometimes it's going to be tense, but it's so good. As we walk together, we work as a synod to support one another through congregational vitality because we know that strong, healthy congregations are good congregations. Sometimes we ask questions of each other for the sake of each other. Sometimes they are uncomfortable, tension-causing questions. Sometimes we on staff are the ones who end up having to ask leaders or whole congregations, is your survival as critical as your mission? because some congregations are focused so much on survival they've lost their mission. Do you exist for your members or for your communities, the communities around? Do we exist for our building or for our baptism? If we have to give up on one, which will it be? Hard questions. Not judgments, just hard questions. Good ones to wrestle with. Transformational Ministry is a formal program whereby our Synod evangelists, other Synod staff, and trained volunteers help congregations consider where they are and consider what they might be being transformed into by God. It's a rigorous but excellent program. In addition to that, we offer, as I've mentioned, conflict management and resolution. We work with call processes as creatively as we can. And the staff wanted to make sure that you heard me say this. We work for, our goal every day is thriving congregations, healthy leaders, happy members, transformed lives and communities. Because so often we hear when we go out, our job must be making life difficult for congregations. One call committee challenged one of my assistants and said, well, you're just not letting us see any candidates. And the assistant said, we're 1,000 candidates short. 40 in Nebraska alone. We don't have anybody to show you. Yes, you do. You're just saving them for your favorite congregations. Now, seriously, just a minute. In terms of human fallibility and sin, let's just be honest. If we give you a candidate whom you call, who's a train wreck, who do you think gets called to fix that? We love our work, but we don't love it so much we want to make more. We're not doing that to you. We want you to succeed, to be healthy. We want excellent pairings between congregations and candidates, and we work so hard. The people you've called work so hard to make that happen. All we ask is your patience, your prayer, your energy, your focus, and your willingness to partner with us, because thriving, happy, healthy congregations and leaders are our goal every day. And we see it happen. I want to introduce you to the staff. I'm going to invite them as I show their photos and say their names, just to stand where they are and wave and stay standing so you can kind of see them around if you don't know who they are. Pastor Steve Meising. Oh, please. These are phenomenal people, but if you clap for everyone, we'll be here till 3 o'clock. Stay standing, Steve. Thank you. Pastor Megan Morrow. Pastor Juliet Hampton. Pastor Kristen Van Stee. By the way, you know you're seated by areas. These two are working with resolutions, but that kind of gives you an idea of the territories they work in. We also have program staff who work in the Omaha office primarily. Lisa Cramey, Faith Formation, Youth and Young Adults. Deacon Timothy Seberg, Director for Stewardship. Brenda Rivas, Communication Manager. Rex Rogers, our Candidacy Coordinator. Our administrative and support staff. Stephanie Lusinski. Diane Harpster. Michelle Herrick. And Angie Geyer. That's how popular Michelle is. She comes up twice. Our Synod evangelists. Pastor Rebecca Sheridan and Pastor Rich Sheridan. The Director of Seeking the Spirit Within, Deacon Connie Stover. Our Parish Ministry Associate staff, Pastor Carol Mappa. Volunteer staff of the Nebraska Synod include our Synod Attorney Bill Biggs, our Tanzania Coordinator Marty Malley, and our Synod Treasurer Dan Friedland. Dan keeps office hours now. That's how much he works for you. We love having him around, all of them. And Pastor Carolyn Grice is the newest addition. She's not exactly Synod staff, but she's working for the Synod on a call in partnership with the Presbyterian Church USA. Carolyn is a Presbyterian pastor. She'll be presiding at worship tomorrow. Who's doing explorations for us in North and South Omaha to see what opportunities there are to partner with congregations or other local ministries to expand our impact and serve in urban Omaha. Would you please join me in thanking all of these members of the Synod staff? They are fantastic. Well, walking together looks not only like all those things that Synod staff help us do to make healthy, thriving congregations, it looks like responding to this stuff. This spring's disaster knocked us on our heels a bit. As a state, we're fortunate that only one congregation in Dannebrog suffered significant damage to its building. But we know that members all over the state suffered, some extensively, some lost entire homes. More importantly, we know that whole communities are suffering. You don't have to be Lutheran to have suffered from disaster, and you don't have to be Lutheran to be helped by Lutherans. Your gifts and the gifts of people in 27 states and Canada, as of last week, totaled just over $250,000. That generosity is incredible. And we partner with Lutheran Disaster Response nationally, who provide us resources, direction, and assistance. We are providing direct aid. We are working to connect people that want to work with areas that need work. Recovery is going to go on for years. I'm not exaggerating, years. On average, Lutheran Disaster Response is there for 4 years. It takes that long for communities to become whole again and lives to become whole again. And Nebraskans aren't great at saying, yeah, I need help. So it may be even longer. Please, as you're aware of people in your community who could use assistance, if you could use assistance, let your pastor, PMA, deacon know. We have means and resources. We partner with Lutheran Family Services and others for mental health. We have direct aid available, all manner of assistance. Our call is to help communities become whole again. And thanks to your generosity, that's happening. We also celebrate walking together with folks around the world, our companion synods, with the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Argentina and Uruguay. That relationship's been going on for 30 years. We have a vision trip at least once a year to go explore, and they come to visit us. We have some significant partnerships going on in theological education, and they look at our Parish Ministry Associate Program as a model that they might use in their continually evolving culture. And of course, while he's out on a field trip right now, Bishop Show and Mama Show are on a field trip, so they're not here. So I can't make fun of them. Janet and Frederick are terrific friends. I'm so grateful to hear. Tanzania is a huge, significant partnership for us, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Tanzania, especially the northern diocese. Twice a year minimum, we send vision trips over. It's the trip of a lifetime. You should consider it. You will go on safari. You'll get to see the elephants and the lions and all of them, zebras. You'll get to travel with other folks from Nebraska and beyond, and you will see how lives are touched and changed. Check out the Synod website and see about an opportunity for you to travel to Argentina or to Tanzania. And know that there are even scholarships available for those who face financial hardship in contemplating that kind of trip. I didn't go for years because I thought it was expensive and I couldn't imagine what I would see in Africa. Well, I could imagine, but it didn't sound that interesting. Well, was I wrong? I've been there 3 times and I can't wait to go again. Consider it. And help me say thanks when you encounter Bishop Show and his wife for the partnership they share with us. This isn't unidirectional. It's not about us blessing them with gifts or money. It's about a partnership helping each other to grow. Their spirit, their energy, their innovation continues to be inspiration for us. Consider a trip. We also walk together with the partnership of Nebraska Synod Serving Arms. And again, I would ask any of the staff or CEOs who happen to be in the room to stand up and wave so you can look around. I'm not going to announce them individually, but if those staff are around. These are extensions of the church. They are the church in the 21st century, and they're doing incredible, incredible things. Make sure you find out more about them and what they do. We appreciate their partnership and the resources they share with us. Also wanted to note, not one of our serving arms necessarily, but a partner through the larger church, the Mission Investment Fund of the ELCA is a place where a lot of your congregations have investments and where you have building loans. There's a brand new regional coordinator for our area, Pastor Janice Kibler. Janice is in the white back there, so she's very visible. Turn around and wave at Janice. Janice is glad to talk to you about MIF, about your congregation's investments or loans or potential investments or loans. Janice, welcome to the job. Welcome to the Nebraska Synod. We're glad you're here. While we're talking about walking together and people who make a difference in our lives, I want to take a point of personal privilege and ask Debbie to stand. And in spite of the fact that after last year when she spoke after the election, someone said, "We elected the wrong one." I'm taking a risk just in making sure that people know who you are and where you are, expressing our gratitude, Debbie's and mine, to you. This last year we moved, twice actually. We're now living in Omaha. Part of that move has meant not only that I'm a little closer to the office, which I enjoy, but that Debbie can continue being a school counselor and enter private practice as a mental health practitioner. So it's a new era for her, for us, and I thank you. It means so much. Those of you who are ministry leaders, it's a better shot than espresso, especially when you're up front and you're not certain, and you look over and your spouse smiles at you. That's a gift. And having acknowledged you with my thanks, I would like to ask all of those in the room who are spouses or significant others of rostered ministers or PMAs, please to stand. All you bashful people. So that we can honor and thank you. There you are. I knew you were there. Your ministry of supporting others' ministry is so important, and we are grateful. Well, we move from growing disciples, walking together, to serving others. We serve others with others through shared ministries. I mentioned half of our congregations are entering into shared ministry partnerships. Our full communion partners, we share with Presbyterians, Methodists, United Church of Christ, Episcopalians. There's no Moravians here. And Reformed Church in America, we don't. Am I missing one? Apparently not. If you're part of a ministry that shares a leader, either you're a pastor with someone else, or you get to share a pastor with someone else, or you're a pastor for another tradition serving. If you're in one of those arrangements where an ELCA congregation is working with a minister or a congregation from another denomination, would you please stand? At last count, we were over a dozen, and everywhere you saw a group stand, that's a community that has ministry that wouldn't if we weren't in full communion partnership and conversation with other denominations. So thank you for that. We also celebrate the fact that we are part of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, the Church of God's Work, Our Hands, where our campaign for the ELCA is coming to a close, nearing $200 million through specialized ministry for leaders, world hunger, disaster response, and more. We're working on sustainability ourselves in the Nebraska Synod. Dan mentioned our stewardship working on mission share, but also the development efforts. Thanks to an Emmanuel grant, we're able to fund a development position. We've looked, there's not a single excellent example of development being done by a synod, district, or conference in the country. We're trying very hard to build one that works by finding the right staff and the right structure, because we know that people are giving specialized, targeted giving more and more, and general offering in the plates less and less. And if we're going to sustain ministry together, we need to be open to how development works. We still don't have the full-time person we think we need to fill that position, but I'm delighted to announce that Joyce Palmer has joined us part-time. Will begin work in the next 2 weeks, doing some development, what I would call soft development, relationship building, and helping us continue to grow into what it means to have full-time development. A lot of you know JP, and if you don't, you probably will, because she'll come visit you. Joyce, where are you? Would you stand, please? There you are. Welcome aboard, Joyce. Thank you. Mission share. We continue to submit more dollars to the ELCA than any other synod. Yeah, come on. When the Huskers win at volleyball, or football or basketball, you get all excited. I mean, Nebraska's winning again. This is like the 30th year in a row. We're number one. Hey. Yeah. Give yourselves a hand. That's generosity. That's careful stewardship. And we don't do it because we have to. We do it because we can and because we're grateful. And because the ELCA is a great partner in getting ministry done around the world. Well, we want to make sure that that story gets out. So you saw little orange cards on your tables and chairs announcing some dates coming up, what we're calling Walking Together the Nebraska Synod Road Show. What that means is much of the Synod staff and local leaders, wherever they are, will be making 9 visits over the next 2 years to sites all over the state to spend a weekend in your backyard so that the Synod staff and ministries are all present. We're inviting you to come on a Saturday to learn and to talk to us so that we can listen and hear what you need and what you're called to be as church. And then on Sunday morning to be in as many congregations as we can to meet as many of your members as we can so that we can connect and help tell the story of this remarkable synod and this remarkable church. Look at those dates, watch for them in emails and on the website, and know that we are coming to your backyard, and we do hope to meet you there. So, as I said at the beginning, we go as disciples to all the world to make disciples of all the world, growing disciples for all the world. We do it because we don't just describe the world we see the world we describe. I'm hoping with me you will describe a world that has challenges, yes, but that also has hopes. The text I mentioned this morning said after the disciples worshiped him, they returned to Jerusalem with great joy. Jesus himself said, I said these things to you so that my joy may be in you and your joy may be complete. Friends, we have so much reason to be joyful and hopeful in this synod. We can delight in being disciples for all nations. You are a blessing to your communities. You are a blessing to the world. You're a blessing to me and those of us who get to work with you. Thank you. Thank you for being who you are and for the parts of the world you change by being the people you are. God bless you as we look forward to another year and as we try to get back on track with the Synod Assembly schedule. If there's a burning question someone must ask, I'll take one as I invite Dara to the... Some of you are in danger of waking up, aren't you? All right. Sincerely, this is the best call in the LCA. You all are incredible. Thank you. Thank you for being in the Nebraska Synod. Thank you. Thank you. You're very kind. Dara?
Thank you, Bishop. At this time, I'd like to introduce the members of the Strategic Mission Vision Working Groups who have been working on the Synod theme for this past year and also for the year to come. I would invite the representatives who will speak on behalf of these working groups to come forward as I introduce the members of each team. This year's theme has been We Are Church Together. Members of that team are Pastor Martha Atkins, Melvin Blair, Miriam Blair, Pastor Barron Cole, Pastor Nancy Cole, Pastor James Freeling, Pastor Peggy Hall, Pastor Cheryl Kester Beyer, Pastor Kat Montira, Pastor Robert Schlishman, Pastor Kristen Van Stee, and Pastor Heidi Wallace. Would you please express your appreciation? The theme for this coming year is We Are Church for the Sake of the World. Members of that team are Pastor John Gokbadang, Pastor Megan Clausen, Ramona Edwards, Pastor Justin Eller, Carrie Gupsh, Jacob Kruger, Jenny Sherrick, Pastor Allison Seberg, PMA Sandy Terry, and Stephanie Lusinski. Please express your appreciation.
I'm Pastor Peggy Hall. I get to do the handoff. We are the church together. And we hope that you enjoyed the Lenten resource material, the devotional that we put together. And it's a time of transition. And we're being joyful about this handoff to Pastor Justin and his team. We are the church for the sake of the world. And in some parts around the world, and this is biblical, when you have a transition, they blow the conch shell. So, Pastor Jody here has a special gift. The Minnesota Vikings want her as well. But here is a joyful transition.
What does this mean?
Good afternoon. I'm Justin Eller. I'm one of the pastors at First Lutheran Church in Lincoln, Nebraska, along with some of my teammates here. I would like to take a point of privilege to introduce them. We have here on our team Pastor Allison Seberg, who is my co-chair on this working group. We also have Pastor John Bedang, Ramona Edwards, Sandy Terry, Jacob Kruger, Pastor Megan Clausen, Jenny Sherrick, Stephanie Lusinski, and Carrie Gubch. We really are honored to be able to work with you as this new team that will take us into this next coming year. As Bishop Brian said in his report, we are the fourth working group of the Synod's strategic mission that really lives out ELCA Presiding Bishop Elizabeth Eaton's 4 marks of the church. We are church, we are Lutheran, we are church together, and we are church for the sake of the world. The plan for this year is to keep the theme of we are church for the sake of the world before you and your faith communities, and to invite you into conversations and reflection and relationship around what it means to be church for the sake of the world. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it matter that we are church and disciples of Jesus Christ, called and sent into the world to be God's hands and feet? So, to keep this conversation fresh throughout the year, we will be producing quarterly newsletters. In the past, you may have received a Lenten devotional. We wanted to continue with that theme, and I invite you to look in front of you on your tables and grab one of these. We will be producing a quarterly newsletter that will not only share with you some ideas about what it means to be church for the sake of the world. It includes liturgical resources. This one includes a Eucharistic prayer and post-communion prayer. Also worship wanderings and consideration. And on the back, there's a faith formation resources that include kind of guided Bible studies that you could use at a retreat or a council meeting or a committee meeting or with young adults. There's a way to engage around the topic and to interact with the topic and reflect on it. So you will receive one of these newsletters quarterly, and also we are recording a podcast that will be recorded and uploaded to the Synod's website so that you and we can hear local and global voices discussing this theme of what it means to be church for the sake of the world. Also, throughout this year, we will be exploring the ELCA's accompaniment model that you'll hear more about later on this evening. That is how we walk together, the ways that we are invited to come alongside and journey with our neighbors and congregations and communities and synod and nation and world. Accompaniment is a way of being church for the sake of the world, not only with our partners around the globe, but also with our neighbors down the street. And so you'll hear more about that coming up. And I invite Pastor Megan Clausen to the microphone to share with you about an art project you're invited to join us on.
So when thinking about We Are Church for the Sake of the World, we began talking about art, and art connects us across cultures and ages and everything. And so, do you want to get this out? So we are going to ask you to add your touch to this parament that we will be using tomorrow for our closing worship, and throughout this next year. So when we were thinking about this, we thought communion. Communion unites us all. So at this time, I'd like you to, on the count of 3, just yell out where you are from. So 1, 2, 3. Awesome. So Christ's table connects all of us here in this room with all of us across the Synod, across all the synods of the ELCA, across all the churches, and it unites us with our siblings in the South Sudan, in Tanzania, in Argentina and Uruguay, the Holy Lands, all over. You get the picture. So we would invite you today, the rest of today, back at the tables in the back. This will be laying out there. Add whatever word comes to mind when you think of We Are Church for the Sake of the World. And we've kind of gotten you started. You might notice that the theme of this newsletter says relationship. The other newsletters throughout the year will have themes as well. So relationship, community, interconnectedness, and accompaniment. So whatever word comes to mind when you think of We Are Church for the Sake of the World, add it on there, layer it over the top on the colored parts. You can write over the top of things. That's the hope. So please do that before tomorrow for closing worship. Thank you.
All right, we'll now move to our workshops. We're going to adjust the schedule by 15 minutes. So workshops A1 through A8 will begin at 2:30, giving you a brief break between this session and the beginning of the workshops. The workshops are being held here upstairs in the Ruby Rooms, as well as here in the Diamond Ballroom and across the way in the Crystal Ballroom. So workshops A1 through A8, now from 2:30 until 3:15. Workshops B1 through B8 will be held from 3:30 until 4:15. You will find in your packet the list of workshops and their locations. It's a double-sided document that looks like this. Snacks and beverages are going to be available on your way out of the workshops, both on this level as well as outside of the Ruby Rooms upstairs. There are stairs available on the east side of the Eunice Center. That's to your right. There's an elevator located here on the west side if you're going upstairs to the Ruby Rooms. And we will return here promptly at 4:30 this afternoon for the ELCA Churchwide Report from Reverend David Wunsch. That being the case, we'll adjourn for now and start our workshops in about 10 minutes or so.